I felt like I might as well talk about this, but for the Duelist Cup, I'm pretty sure these are some of the best staples you should be running, honestly. Well, I can't really check other people's decks to see if they're running them, but I haven't really faced super a lot of these, but we'll start from here. Droll and Lockbird, pretty good card. This can stop certain decks. It's a little bit more niche, but it is only an SR, so that's worth considering. Kind of the same thing with Gamma, but Gamma I'd say is just better than Droll. So with Droll, your opponent won't be able to draw any more cards for the turn, but they have to have drawn or added a card. Except for the draw phase. And then neither player will be able to draw for the rest of the turn. This doesn't necessarily stop all decks, but this does hinder certain decks. Like, for example, Fluwanderies will struggle to make a meaningful board after a draw. And there are certain other decks similar to that, but this does not cripple every deck, and that does make it a bit of a useless card at times. So, for example, against zombies, it doesn't really do anything. The most just pure zombie build would do is maybe add one card off of, like, for example, a Prosp or a Desire or something like that. A Small World, especially in the first turn. Not much more than that. Card does nothing. So, with Gamma here, Gamma can negate and destroy your opponent's monster. Well, if they activate, yeah, Beermon. When your opponent activates a monster effect and you control no monsters, you can special summon both this card from your hand and one Cyframe Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And if you do, you can negate the activation and destroy that card. So this card is very useful for going first and second, but it depends on what deck you're running. So for example, if you use a Danger, your opponent activates Max C. You dealt with Max C, which would have been an issue, and you also got 2 bodies. So you just go like +3, I believe, is it? Yeah, about +3, I'd say. Pretty good card. You do have to run Driver though, but you know, it is what it is. Also limited too. So with Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, this is also good against Blue and the Hulk Turbo decks like Rose Tenyi, all those adventure decks as well. And then we have Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, which also shut them down. Against Prank Kids, for example. Well, oh, what? Against Prank Kid? Is that not how you spell it? Hold up. I will get this eventually. Oh, like, with a space. Cool. So if you banish Meow Moo, this should shut down their play, because it will banish all of their Meow Moos, so they won't be able to go into any of their Prank Kids, making it impossible to play for them. So I think you'd be fine just having these 3 in your extra deck. If you run some of these yourself, then more power to you. Yeah, Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries reveals the card in your extra deck and then banishes them in their extra deck, so you still keep your Hulk, for example. So if you're just running a deck that plays Hulk, then Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries is worth consideration, because there are a lot of decks that really use Hulk. It's basically almost like a crutch even, because if you get rid of Hulk, then the deck becomes literally useless. or close to it. Ash Blossom is just useful in general for your own turn and your opponent's turn. For example, when your opponent uses Maxi, you can Ash it, and when your opponent tries to add a card, you can negate that. It stops a bunch of different lines of play. And for example, if you Ash a Hulk, that shuts down a good amount of decks. Well, it shuts down turns. And the important thing about Gamma here, though, that I forgot to mention is, it plays around Called By, and not that many people will run Gamma right now. So no one's going to have Gamma with Crossout as well. So it plays around both Called By and Crossout. Imperm plays around just Called By, for example, and Nibiru plays around Called By. Well, yeah. And Token Collector, if it's in your hand, it plays around Called By as well. And Ghost Bell, for when your opponent actually activates the effect of the Enchantress, it's actually kind of interesting because of how you can trigger Ghost Bell. Because you can add Rite of Aramesir from your deck or graveyard to your hand when your opponent attempts to search with Enchantress. You can actually negate it with both Ghost Bell and Ash Blossom. And you can also negate a Called By, for example. And that allows you to protect your cards from a Called By as well. Like, for example, I play zombies, so if I have Doom King in the graveyard, I can just use this to protect my Doom King or my Scythe from Called By. And Lancia kind of depends on what deck you're playing against. Because against Adventure Prank Kids, it only stops them from searching rights. It doesn't actually stop them from using it either, so it's kind of not as good as some of the other cards. And then we have Nibiru. Nibiru just completely shits on combo decks, just straight up. They summon 5 times, you can just wipe their entire board and give them a vanilla token. And then with Dark Ruler no more for breaking boards, and Forbidden Droplet. Forbidden Droplet's a bit better because you can use it on the second turn after you make your board on the first as well. And there are uses for that as well. Same thing with Imperm as well. But the thing about Imperm is it plays around Called By the Grave, so it's better than, for example, an Effect Veiling in that sense. And you can just set it and use it on turn 2 as well. And you can also use this on your own turn as well, so it has versatility. For example, your opponent has a good old VFD. So, if you control no cards, and your opponent activates Chain 1 True King in standby or draw phase, whatever, you can chain Imperm, negate True King, and then you're gaming again. Not much you can do against Rongo with these 3. Well, actually, these 2. Because you can still, like, Imperm on Gossip Shadow, which is great. But, yeah, basically these are probably the best hand traps, and you should be considering running some of these. And I hope I influence you to try to play some new cards.